Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today we have another question from After Fauve, which I have chosen because here in the Northern Hemisphere we are coming up upon the Samhain holiday, and I thought it was an appropriate and amusing question, a little lighter than most of our questions. And After Fauve asks, in relevance to the popular mythology around the vampire, how would one go about stopping a pagan vampire? And of course what After Fauve is referring to is that in vampire movies and stories you'll often see someone brandish a crucifix to turn the vampire around. But obviously within a pagan context this would not be the appropriate thing to do. He's also referring to the scene from the famous movie The Fearless Vampire Hunters, where the vampire hunter brandishes his crucifix and the vampire looks at him and says, "Oy vey, have you got the wrong vampire?" And so what would you do within the context of the mythology to combat a pagan vampire? Well, you obviously would not use a crucifix, but one of the things that you find in this kind of popular mythology of various different sorts of monsters, such as vampires and werewolves and so forth, is that very often the item which is used for protection is made from silver. And this is because the vast majority of these mythological creatures, which are mythological in this context, if not necessarily all contexts, is that they are linked to the night, often to the full moon, sometimes only to the night, but in either case, in this way they are associated with silver. The moon is the ruler of the night, therefore using the metal of the planetary ruler of the night is a means of controlling them. So when you see the vampire hunter brandish their crucifix, very often you'll notice it's actually made of silver, particularly in older works. And it, in some cases, could be said to be the silver that is actually meant to be indicated as the repellent. You certainly find this in the case of the werewolf, where you have the silver bullet. You'll also find silver knives mentioned in some of these contexts. So if you were, say, writing a vampire story with a purely pagan setting, then what you would want to look for, I would think, would be an item made out of silver, particularly a holy item. Which brings us to the second answer, and that is that within this mythos you often will find that any holy item can be used in modern versions of the stories. And one of my favorite examples comes from The Mummy, the 1932 movie, which I talked about on the vlog a few weeks ago. And in this movie, the requisite aged professor gives the beautiful heroine a silver image of the goddess Isis to use for protection. And this is a very good example of this sort of amulet within a pagan context. So if you're working with a vampire mythos in a pagan context and you want to know what to use to turn the vampire, to control the vampire, I would say a silver amulet of some sort, almost any sort, would be a good answer. And something like an ankh or an image of a particular deity would be a particularly good answer. So, if we were talking in more real terms, we would be talking about an energy vampire. And if we were talking in more real terms about a werewolf, we'd be talking about shape-shifting. And we've talked about these in the vlog in other contexts, but if you were trying to protect yourself from a real energy vampire, and that could be a whole series of vlogs as to what constitutes a vampire, whether we're talking about a psychic vampire or someone who is a self-identifying vampire and part of the vampire subculture, but we're going to just kind of speak generally now. If you were dealing with an energetic vampire taking your energy against your will, what you'd really want to do is to shield against them, to place a barrier between yourself and them, and there are many different ways to do this. I would recommend starting with visualization and working with a strong affirmation, such as the kind that I use in the weekly prayer ceremony with the Chancellor's Healing Shrine. So these would be my suggestions for if you're actually dealing with a psychic vampire. You basically want to place a barrier between yourself and them. You also might want to look for cords and cut them. And this is very general advice, but a good place to start should you have that problem. Another thing that you can do should you find yourself in that situation, and it's worth bearing in mind that most energetic vampires that you're likely to encounter in that situation have no idea that they are actually doing this, but are doing it subconsciously, is to send them back something they would not want, an energy that is perhaps bitter, for example. And of course, another way to do it, if you're in a position to do it, is to simply flood them with healing energy, which may take care of their energetic need for that moment and cause them to leave you alone. So these are a number of different things you could do for a real energy vampire, not to be confused with a member of the vampire subculture, which is a whole other vlog. So those are some thoughts on an interesting and unusual topic, perfect for the Samhain season. I hope you find them interesting, and until next time, may you blessed be. Pray for peace. Pray for love. Pray for stability. Pray for the nation where you live. Pray for the world. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from witchschool.com. Are you looking for the best in pagan and magical education? With more than 12,000 pages, witchschool.com is like having your own personal library with individual learning assistants to help you study. And Witchschool's Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere education system is available any place on Earth, anywhere you are and anytime you want it, as long as you have an internet connection. Witchschool's lifetime memberships are a great value. They really do last a lifetime. They've been there for years and they'll be there for years to come. So get your membership today at witchschool.com.